So let's talk about the hot topic that I completely and utterly, well, maybe not completely, but mostly disagree with. Like, everything crochet is focused on young people because they believe, the industry believes that is like young people are the ones that are learning the craft. And this is where I sort of mostly disagree with this statement. I mostly disagree because there are many, 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 many young people that are learning crochet. However, there are also just as many of us that are over 40 learning how to crochet, over 50 learning how to crochet, over 60 that are learning how to crochet. And there are even some people, maybe not quite as many, but there are some people that are over 70 learning how to crochet. And before you say, yeah, but there's a lot more people that are under 30 that are learning how to crochet. I'm going to argue a little bit with that because my statistics, my very unofficial statistics, do not agree with that statement. Here's the backstory of this. So recently I was watching a video by Elise Crochet, and I think Elise is fabulous. I love her videos. Highly recommend you check them out. I'll put a link to her channel in the details below. And she was returning from the H&H convention, which is, if you're not familiar, the H&H convention is, and I might not be saying that right, I'm not sure, it's H&H something. Anyway, thank you. This event is a by invitation only, from what I understand, and it is primarily geared towards those on the business side of things. And by business, I don't mean just like those that do markets or craft fairs. I mean those that are making the yarn and those that are creating the patterns. And I mean, this attracts like the CEO of Lion Brand and the CEO of Premier Yarns. So it is the big event of the year for the big companies to kind of get together and find out what are the up and coming trends, how are current events like the closing down of Joann's affecting the industry, and all of those kind of good things. So Elise was at this event and she was interviewing a lot of different industry individuals, and many, many, many of them said something about the lines of how the young people are the ones that are driving the crochet industry, because those are the ones that are like never before learning how to crochet for the very first time. And here's where my argument applies. I think that those individuals absolutely are learning to crochet or knit or whatever the craft is for the very first time. And I also think those of us in the older generations are also learning to crochet and knit for the very first time. I added a comment to Elise's video stating this, and I was blown away by the number of responses that I got in support of that comment. Never before have I commented on somebody else's video and gotten that much of a response to it. So I know I hit a nerve, and I know I'm not the only one with this belief. I kind of feel like, once again, Generation X is the lost generation. So once again, we are left out of the statistics. You got the grandmas on the one end where, they've been crocheting and knitting their whole lives. They learned from their grandmas or their aunts or whoever it was. And then on the other end, you have the young people, the millennials and the Gen Zers, who are the up and coming newcomers in the industry. But my generation is once again completely forgotten from the picture. Why does this matter? Well, it really does matter because my generation may have different choices in garments that we want to wear. We may have different choices in the kind of yarns that we want to use. And, we might have different things like, well, ergonomic issues that we have to deal with. And yet, the younger generation is going to get so much attention from the industry leaders that our generation is kind of getting left out in the cold. We're not going to have as many patterns to choose from. I guarantee you, this girl right here is not going to be wearing a triangle bikini top that is crocheted. Not happening. You can't pay me enough to do that. Well, maybe you could, as long as there weren't photos. So, but my point there is that there are a lot of opportunities that could be specifically geared towards those individuals who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and beyond that are going to get left out because we're not the ones that are on social media recording videos and posting all of our work. Well, I am, but most others aren't. They're the ones that are quietly and silently crocheting at their children's baseball games or at their grandchildren's baseball games. They're the ones that are taking their crochet to the doctor's offices and, to different events and that kind of thing so that they can get that time in. But a lot of times, and what I was thinking about is, like, for me, and my story might not be the same as yours. It might not be the same as the next person that's sort of in my age range. But for me, when my mother knit and crocheted the whole time I was growing up, and I had zero interest whatsoever in learning the craft. I just didn't want to. In fact, when I was told I had to take home ec, I was like, give me anything but home ec. Because I'm not going to be a housewife. I have no desire to be a housewife. I have no desire to stay at home taking care of business. I'm going to be a career woman. Yeah, that's funny, isn't it? And so I really rebelled against any sort of handicraft whatsoever. And then once I got to a certain point, my kids were older. I didn't need to focus as much on my business. I started seeing all of this younger generation posting all of this stuff on social media. I'm like, maybe now's the time to learn how to crochet. I think I could do that. And I really debated it for probably a good year before I finally said, yeah, I'm actually going to try that out. But it was not something that I had any interest in when I was younger. Now, some of the stories that came out from that comment that I made on Elisa's post on her video, one gal said, she did have an interest in learning when she was younger, but her mother wouldn't teach her because they were both very stubborn personalities and it just wasn't something that was going to go over well. So she didn't really have the avenue to learn. But now with YouTube videos and sites like Craftsy, and Skillshare, all of these sites that make it so easy for anybody to learn the craft. There are not just the younger generation that's learning, but there are many of us that are in that older age range that are also learning. And I hope more than anything that if this video gets out there to maybe some bigwigs, fingers crossed, they don't forget about us. That the designers out there don't forget about us. That those making yarn don't forget about us in that sort of lost and forgotten generation, because we're also that generation that's going to have more funds to spend as we become empty nesters and we sort of move into that zone where we don't have to spend as much money on our kids all the time. It's definitely an opportunity that I hope that they do not overlook. What about you? What's your story? When did you learn how to crochet? How old were you? How long have you been crocheting? Who taught you how to crochet? I want to know all about you and your story. Share it with me in the comments below because I'm just fascinated by this concept and I want to see how right I am about this. I think I'm not that far off. I do think that there are a lot of young people that are learning, and they're not learning from the older generations. They're learning from YouTube and that kind of thing. But I think that there are also many of us that are in the older generations that are learning for the very first time. Hey, Farah, take us out.